My name is Gasia Mikaelian, and I'm coming to you through KTVU Fox 2 News in the San Francisco Bay Area. Today we're talking about how work has dramatically affected the workplace and the American worker. Let's talk more by welcoming Alexandra Levit, workforce expert and author to the conversation. Thanks for joining me, Alexandra.
Thanks for having me, Gasia. It's great to be here.
We're going to reflect a little bit on a study done by DeVry University that doesn't show a lot of hope being felt by the American worker. Can you break down the biggest takeaways from the study for you?
Absolutely. Well, the biggest takeaway for me is that more than a third of American workers feel that based on their employer's recent behavior during the pandemic, that they are disposable, which means that they don't feel valued. They feel like their employer could replace them on a dime, that their work isn't meaningful, or that they aren't contributing in a way in which they could not be replaced. And it's a little bit of a sad sentiment that so many people feel that way.
That's not a good feeling. I've had it before. You also found that this feeling breaks down differently depending on how highly skilled or how well paid a worker is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's not surprising that people who are compensated more, who might have greater education and more to, I suppose, technically bring to the table, those people do not feel as disposable. Whereas if you are someone who is an hourly worker, who might work really, really hard and have a great attitude and a great point of view, you still might feel like you could be easily replaced. And it's never a good place to be, whether you are high on the totem pole or whether you're lower down. Universally, I think this is a concern that we need to address.
Can you describe some of the employer's actions that the employees are reacting to?
Well, I think one thing that I heard that was just really shocking, and I heard it from multiple people. So it is anecdotal. It's not something we asked about in the survey. But I hear a lot of employers saying, it's not so much anymore, but in the months of like March and April and May, I heard a lot of people saying their employer was telling them, you're just lucky to have a job. Just be grateful that we're not laying you off, that we're not cutting your hours. And that doesn't instill a feeling of appreciation in people when they feel like employers can essentially do whatever they want. They have all the power, and there's nothing that we can in fact do to impact the outcome. And hopefully we'll talk a little bit about the things that you can do, because as an individual, there definitely are.
Well, so then let's go ahead and talk about it, because I hear from people all the time, personally and professionally, who say, gee, my big corporation is going through layoffs. I think I'm okay, but I'm not sure. But if I start to look across the street, they're doing layoffs over there too. So what can the individual worker do to better his or her situation?
At DeVry University, we have a new concept that we call career durability. And career durability reflects the ability to maintain static, steady employment over a period of time. So just because you lose one job doesn't necessarily mean that you can't go get something else. It's the ability to pivot, to react to changes in the environment that you might not necessarily be able to control. And there are 5 pillars of career durability that we recommend that people focus on. The first couple are sort of obvious. They're hard and soft skills. So hard skills refer to the ability to do something very specific, like program an application, or if you're a phlebotomist, to insert a needle. Very, very specific things. Then you have soft skills, which refer to your ability to get along well with other people generally in a workforce capacity or workplace capacity. Then you have institutional knowledge, which refers to the ability just to be somewhere long enough to get how the culture works, to get how the industry works and how your job works. And that's important. We also talk about applied technology skills, which refers to the ability to use people, processes, data, and devices to do your job more effectively. So in other words, you don't necessarily have to know how to code, but you do have to know that there's a certain software program out there to help you do your job. Gasia, as an example, you know how to operate Zoom. Well, that's an applied technology skill, because to do reporting in this day and age, you have to know how to use Zoom. So that's a very simple example. And then finally, the last pillar is growth mindset. So the ability to really focus on your own learning and take it into your own hands. You don't wait for your boss to teach you something new. You go out there and you say, okay, well, what's coming next in my industry? And how can I prepare myself to acquire new skills? So those are the 5 components of career durability that really can help shield people from both this feeling of disposability, but also just from unemployment or underemployment in general.
I had a good conversation with my boss near the beginning of the pandemic. You can tell I'm working from home. And I told her, I said, I am feeling very nervous for my job because I feel like I'm being graded on all the same metrics you were looking at me with in the beginning, before the pandemic. And here I'm working from home. I'm talking to you through Zoom. I'm reading my news scripts off a laptop. Everything is different. And
Yeah.
she was very generous in saying, those old rules are out the window. We're not trying to look at September Gasia by the January 2020 Gasia rules. And when she said that, it put my mind at ease, because I was so hard trying to fit, this now square peg into that old round hole, and it wasn't fitting. So I give her lots of credit. And I hope that there are other bosses out there who say, look, don't worry. That's not what I'm judging you by.
Yeah, well, I think that's an area where employers could do a better job, and also helping to educate people on the skills that they do need to acquire and the attributes they do need to have to be successful, because it's changed overnight for everyone. And I think a lot of people just don't know what they should be focusing on or what they're being evaluated based on. And I think that that's setting ourselves up to feel, unfortunately, more disposable in the future.
And you think about people who've been in a career, say, for 20 plus years, we'd like to think, at this point, I have the hang of it. I know how it works.
Yeah.
Sometimes new things pop up, but for the most part, I got this. All of us in news are saying, this is all new to me. So for the first time, I've been doing this 23 years, and I'm telling myself, it's time to learn new things. And as soon as I made that shift up here, I didn't look fearfully at things like Zoom or, everything that's new. I just had to adjust up here because the reality was already coming at me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's that growth mindset. That's that fifth pillar that's absolutely essential, especially there on the West Coast. I would say that having career durability, and particularly that growth mindset, or the ability to pivot and make changes as necessary with not just the pandemic, but the climate change related events that you all are having. I mean, companies are going to be constantly switching up operations, moving people around, and expecting the employee to do their part to figure out, okay, well, how can I maintain competitive, successful employment during these really chaotic years?
So for those people who are either going through layoffs or who know that their company has said, we have to cut 10, 15%, and they're worried about it, is now the time to look across the street? Is it the time to look at a totally different industry? If we want to stay employed, what are the best steps to take?
I believe you should always be looking. You should always be looking to broaden your skill set and acquire what we call transferable skills. So those are skills that are relevant across a wide variety of industries and roles, things like public speaking and finance and marketing and sales. No matter what job you have, you're going to need to leverage some of those skills. And as we've seen, people are moving from one industry into another, or one role into another. One of the things I saw happening all the time in March and April was organizations did not want to lay off their employees, so instead they redeployed them. People in one department might have been really slow because their business was negatively impacted by the pandemic, while another area of the business would be booming. And so they needed to shift people from one area into another. And the more you're able to seamlessly do that because you have the skills that it will take to hit the ground running, the better off you're going to be.
Let's talk about something. I feel like I get almost daily, weekly emails from my managers saying, these are the changes happening in the newsroom, in the studio, in the station, plastic partitions, one-way aisles, hand sanitizer at every, and according to the study, I'm not the only one getting those emails, but workers want something other than what it looks like management is providing.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a disconnect here. I think at the end of the day, and this is true for a lot of different reasons, it's not just, well, we're in the pandemic and we're difficult financial times, but people want money. They want you to show them the money. They want their compensation to reflect not only the work that they're doing, but the risk that they're taking working in general, especially if they are an essential worker, they have to go into an in-person environment. And so it's all fine and good to offer basic safety, to offer the normal perks, to offer benefits. You would think health benefits would be really, really critical now. And they are, but when we look at ranking these things, we still see that financial compensation in terms of a paycheck where you actually get money every month is still the thing that speaks more to employees, even if they do expect employers to maintain basic safety standards.
This reminds me of sort of the joke that we used to have at stations that I've been at in the past. And the station would put together a nice Christmas party, and we'd all get dressed up and we'd have a nice meal together, but we'd kind of grumble behind the scenes, like, I'd rather take a $50 gift card to the local grocery store, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How is that disconnect happening between what the workers want and what management is able to provide?
Well, I think it is a tough time financially for a lot of companies. They have had to pull back, and they don't want to lay people off. They don't want to fire people. So instead, they've made a lot of people take hourly cuts. They've made them take pay cuts. We see a lot of the 10% pay cut, 20% pay cut, so they can keep everybody employed, but they're making less money. And so naturally, I would say that most people are working harder, whether you're in an in-person environment where you're an essential worker or you are putting yourself at risk by going into a physical location, or you're at home and you might be working twice the hours that you were working before because you don't have a commute. You have people accessible to you 24/7. People feel like they're working a lot harder generally, and they're making less money. So that doesn't sit well with people. But at the same time, I think the financial realities of a lot of organizations are that they have struggled during the pandemic, and now people are just starting to kind of come out of it, but I think we've got a long road ahead of us. And so what I would encourage individuals to do is be patient with your employer and recognize that in most cases employers are doing the best they can, and hopefully studies like DeVry's one that we've just put out will help employers to understand what is actually valued and how to communicate to their employees that they really are appreciated and that they're doing the best they can.
And for people who are very interested in what you've been saying, either they're managers and want to do better for their employees, or they're a worker who's feeling threatened because of impending layoffs and they want to put themselves in a better position, where online might we be able to go to get more information on what we've talked about?
Well, you should definitely visit the Career Advisory Board website. That's careeradvisoryboard.org. We have a variety of different research studies. You can also visit the DeVry University website, where we have a copy of this research as well. And if you'd like to learn more about me, I write on a variety of workforce topics. So you can visit me at alexandralevit.com.
All right, Levit, Levit, Alexandra Levit, thank you so much for joining me today. My best to you.
Thank you, Gasia. Great to have.